I'm Erin Jones, and I am a freelance writer, journalist, playwright in Mount Airy, Maryland. And yeah,
So what is your origin story like Spider-Man?
like Spider-Man. I think the best way to describe it, I like to say I'm a former teacher and forever student, because learning has been something that's been really important to me throughout my life. I grew up in Maryland, in Montgomery County, um, and I've just moved really to Carroll County in the last year, but I think I really didn't realize how beautiful this state is until I got outside the DC area. Um, but I was a teacher for about 10 years, and I, during that time, studied in graduate school. I was working during the summers in graduate school. I was able to study um, half through Middlebury College in Vermont and half through Oxford University, and that's where I graduated. And that was such a transformative experience that gave me such a love for travel and learning. And this whole time, I really did want to be a writer ultimately. I think I started to see I wanted to continue to kind of learn and teach a little bit through writing, but that really became my passion and my goal, and I've been doing that for the last year.
So when did you found your organization Galvanize and Grow Copywriting?
That was in the last year, and that is I took kind of a professional quiz um, that was kind of talking about what is your superpower that you have, and Galvanize was one of those superpowers. Galvanize and Create were the two that I had, and I always loved that idea of like finding a cause or finding a really cool thing and just being its biggest cheerleader. I also coached cheerleading when I was a teacher, so that also falls in line. Um, but that idea is kind of the driving force behind that business of this idea that I could make kind of um, that quality that I have really work for other people and try to get behind the causes that they're doing, the work they're doing, the really cool things that are happening in the community. And I think that kind of spills over a little bit into journalism too, because I kind of it's a little bit of kind of split between the marketing stuff and the journalism stuff, but both are very similar of like telling these stories and finding these really talking to people and celebrating us humans.
So what is copywriting?
Copywriting is writing that is intended to either sell or move people in some way. So it can be as simple as, the emails we all get, or website copy, landing pages, sales pages. It spills a little bit over into content writing, which sometimes people think are the same thing. And that's writing that is intended to enrich in some way. So, blog posts or those things like that. So I do a little bit of that too. For me, it's kind of spilled a little bit into some social media management and that kind of thing as well. Um, but it is at its core intended to um, it's kind of a big catch-all category. But at its core, it's meant to kind of get a response from people.
That's so cool. I was thinking that you are anything that has to do with writing, you are it, right? Copywriting, check. Playwriting, check. Really, check. Storytelling, check.
You're
This
telling.
is wonderful. So now I want to kind of shift into the playwriting because
Mhm.
I am so excited that I was able to perform your work, at least part of your work. It was really a wonderful honor. And I'm curious about you as a playwright. How did your playwriting journey begin?
Oh, and thank you so much. You were such an incredible job in that play, and it was such
First
an honor to have you say my words that I wrote.
grade.
Um, yeah, so I've always been into theater, and my dad did some playwriting too, and I grew up kind of doing high school, college theater. I've done some operas as well with the Victorian Lyric Opera, and I love the theater. But as a playwright, I was always kind of writing fiction, and that was kind of the medium through which I was telling stories and creating stories. And then my brother passed away in 2009, around the time I was getting ready to go to, or a couple years before I went to grad school. And after he died, I stopped writing, and I was completely blocked as a writer. I just could not do it for whatever reason. And I took I signed up on a whim for this playwriting class in graduate school, one of the summers I was in Vermont. And I just thought, this is going to be the thing that I'm going to have to write for this. So maybe this will get me writing again. And it turned out to be the most wonderful playwriting professor, Dare Club, who's won an Obie and teaches at the University of Iowa. And he just created such an amazing safe space for that class. I cried in front of the poor man like so soon after, too soon after meeting him.
Safe,
But
you felt safe.
I did. And that's literally what he told me is he said, you're safe, you're safe. And that was something we had to do this exercise where we wrote 25 pages of stream of consciousness, and it was due the anniversary that my brother died. And I told him, I don't think I can do this because I'm scared of what 25 pages of my stream of consciousness is going to produce. I've been avoiding it for 4 years. And I pushed through it, and he probably knows more about my grief than most people do. And I just never stopped writing after that, and wrote a play that semester, and just continued to write and write and write. I've done a little bit of screenwriting that never went anywhere, but just kind of exploring different ways of storytelling in the performance
What is
category.
what does playwriting mean to you?
I think I think back to the line from Beginning Henry V, where he says, "Oh, for a muse of fire that would transcend the brightest heaven of invention." And there's something so magical about theater where you can bring people in a space, you bring actors in a space, and through this kind of shared magic, we get to bring this story to life. And there's something so special about that. That it is truly like it's a muse of fire, it's a magical setting.
Wow, that's really good. What was what was your process for creating the play Dress Code?
That was so so interesting because I wrote it actually as a creative nonfiction essay, um, about 2 years ago. And it was based on a series of vignettes from my own life and um, from both some of my upbringing and then from teaching as well. Um, and it just never really went anywhere. And I'd gotten a lot of really positive feedback from people who had workshopped it and this. Um, but when I heard about this festival in Carroll County, I thought it suddenly dawned on me that this could be all combined into one scene and really just make an amalgam of all those experiences and stories and fictionalize it. And when I started doing that, it just suddenly came together, and I just kind of it made sense suddenly.
Can you give an overview of what Dress Code is about?
Yeah. So it's essentially it takes place in one faculty meeting where um, teachers are discussing dress code, and throughout that meeting, underlying attitudes about dress code and particularly um, policing women's bodies and trying to put undue pressure on young girls starts to become apparent. And um, there is a twist towards the end that reveals kind of what a lot of those attitudes, the harm and the tangible harm, and really how ridiculous those attitudes are. I don't know if I should say the
No.
whole thing, but that's kind of the in a nutshell.
Do you publish your stories or your plays?
Um, I haven't yet. I think this one I'm hoping to kind of search for some other avenues from it, and it was amazing to see it in that context. And now I'm hoping this will not be the end of its journey.
I don't think so. It was really well written and was really well developed and is really beautiful. I think you did a wonderful job. It's
Thank
excellent.
you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And then do you have any other plans, any other things you're working on play-wise?
Um, Play-wise, not at the moment. I'm kind of reopening a novel and kind of working on some other things that I think there's a couple stories that I never really know, like, does this need to be a play, or does this need to be a short story, or does this need to be a novel?
Right.
So I'm going kind of back in the fiction this summer, delving back into fiction in a more serious way, with the eye that sometimes it takes legs and goes places you don't expect. And so I'm kind of putting the feelers out to see, where's this going to go?
I'm so curious about your writing process. What's your writing process?
Um, for any genre or for
Anything.
fiction?
Are they different? Like a short story versus a play? Like, what's the process for each one? Start with short story.
So the short story, a lot of times I think they're actually one act play in particular is actually very similar, um, in its process to a short story, because both of them have to be kind of there's limited setting there, after which no one can be the same. Nothing can ever be the same. So it has to be kind of short and then also significant on a level. Something happens. So my process for writing, with fiction tends to be a little bit more kind of loosey goosey, where uh I tend to have an idea and I try to write what I'm inspired to write in that moment. So oftentimes it'll take kind of a patchwork shape of like, oh, this scene, this dialogue is incredibly clear right now. I'm going to write that and capture it while the moment is fresh. Because inspiration is hard to generate. Again, if you kind of put a pin in it and come back, sometimes you'll find, what was it going to say? I was so inspired it earlier. Um, but in this particular case, because it was based on a nonfiction essay, it kind of was all there and it was a little more based on life. But in general, I will usually try to start with the immediate inspiration, whatever that is. Then I'll create an outline and a framework. And then I'll start to drop in, additional inspiration as it comes and fill in it, flesh it out that way. Or I'll just start from the beginning and plow through. So there needs to be some balance of both, capturing that lightning inspiration when it comes and having the discipline to push through the non-inspired parts, and then eventually it all comes together.
What do you, I know there are a lot of people that are listening, and even me, where I was inspired to write. I was a writer when I was younger, and then sometimes it's like, uh, you know, what's the inspiration? So, what advice do you have for getting started?
Um, oh goodness. I mean, the simple answer is write and realize to get into that habit, whether it's setting a goal for yourself, 500 words, and or write 10 minutes a day. Something really simple that you can do, and there's so much. I think writing right now, and publishing in particular, is very made writing into somewhat of a commodity. But the reality is like your words are so precious, your ideas are so precious, and they're only given to you. And so this idea that everyone is given this spark to create and this light within them, and only they can share what is inside of them, and really value the words that you have to share, and keep being your biggest advocate in that. Behind every successful writing thing, whether it's a play, whether it's a story, there's a lot of hours of like loneliness and self-doubt, where you're just like, I gotta sit in this laptop and I'm not gonna leave until this character tells me what they need to tell me. But you have to push through that, being your own biggest cheerleader, and also find other artists who can help you, encourage you, say your story is worth saying, your ideas are worth saying, your words are only given to you, they're not given to anyone else, and you need to be the one to tell them. From a practical standpoint, I love the book The Artist's Way by Julie Cameron. And one of her biggest, kind of points that she says to writers who are stuck creatively is this idea of stream of consciousness, and she recommends starting with the morning pages, which is like as soon as you wake up, you stream of conscious like 3 words or 3 pages worth of words. That a lot of it can be, um, just like, here's what I need to do today, here's what I'm anxious about, but it's kind of like skimming the top off of your thoughts, and then you can get to what is kind of crystallized and clear and beautiful, and just helps you. But it helps you just kind of flex that writing muscle and be like, writing is important even if it never sees the light of day, besides this journal. So that would be my advice.
That's really good advice. If someone wants to learn more about you or contact you, where do they go?
um, I'm pretty active on Instagram. My writing Instagram is Erin Jones Writer. So you could follow, I post kind of stuff I write, and some travel stuff too. And my website is also erinjoneswriter.com, and that will point to whether you want to work with me as a copywriting client. It'll point to my publications or travel writing, or just kind of, it's kind of a landing page for where do you want to go? What do you want to see? So those would be the places.
Thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.